wonderful humans. Welcome to another episode of Corey Spectra Services YouTube channel. And today we have an amazing guest, Ima Rose.
Hello.
And so today we're going to, as many of you know, we are just starting a new interview series where I'm interviewing a number of amazing humans who are queer, trans, and spiritual, and will be who are leaders in their own right and just trying to connect with what they do and what took them on their path and all of those wonderful things. How are you doing, Ima?
I'm doing really fantastic. Thank you.
Awesome. And so the first thing I want to get started is maybe if you want to just share a little bit who you are and what you do.
Yes. So my name is Ima Rose, and I run the Rose Temple of the Imaginal Heart up here in Vernon, BC. And basically, my entire life has been dedicated to my spiritual path. I started coming into my conscious awareness of spirit and interacting with spirit at around 8, and moved on from there. Between 12 and 16, I really dedicated myself to my craft and just like learning and absorbing as much as I could, basically full time. And from 16 on, I self-initiated. And so that brought me into a life of deep spirit and ceremony. And so, yeah, and I've had a really beautiful journey through all of it. And so I identify as gender fluid. And for me, there was very much that was part of my like spiritual path and coming into an exploration of like all aspects and spectrum of, you know, my gender, my sexuality, and really coming into that place of like divine union within. And so being able to move fluidly through my multidimensional self, and so coming into like balance with my gender and my sexuality was a big part of that.
Yeah. And one of the things I'm really hearing, and I know this is true, that I know in my own journey connecting with my gender, that it is in a way inseparable from my spiritual path. It is part of it, not the only part or the whole thing, but it's a part of it. Would you kind of resonate with that?
Absolutely. For me, it was really foundational, actually. Like, it really is one of the like strong threads that ties through. Like you said, it's not the only part, but it's definitely foundational and definitely almost like a backbone to the entire journey.
Yeah. So I know through talking to a lot of folks who identify as gender fluid, everyone describes it and how their reality, how they see it for themselves is a little different. Can you describe what it means for you?
Yeah, so for me, I tend to think within the constructs now of like, you know, the divine masculine or feminine traits and like what those are and how they represent. And I do believe that every person has both within them.
Yeah.
And once you come into that balance, and for me, it's almost like a dissolution of this illusion of separation between the two.
Yeah.
You know, and so rather than it being like, you know, this is what masculinity is, this is what femininity is, you know, it's just like there's two sides. It's very dualistic. For me, it is, you know, it's all part of this beautiful spectrum, and it's almost like I see it when I think fluidity, it's like an emotional fluidity, a spiritual fluidity, just like an ability to like flow from one side of the spectrum to another in the ways that I like embody and represent. And, you know, being an independent mom is one, like for me, a big showing of that, you know, how I can shift into like, you know, that more like structured and like discipline and like that masculine role, and then like have to immediately switch out to be like the nurturing and like caregiving and like, you know, deeply emotionally connected. And yeah, that
Cool. And I know you spoke a little about the sacred masculine and feminine, and I know it's a lot of stuff I do in my work too, but there's a lot of confusion what that is, because in part we are still so indoctrinated with you know, the shadow or the patriarchal version of masculinity and femininity. And can you describe a little bit or flesh that out a little bit for folks?
Totally. And so one of the ways that I see it is almost like a quadrant there. And again, it's not like, you know, strict lines. It's all spectrum in between, right? It's a gradient. But, you know, there is the divine feminine and masculine. Also, you could also see it as the mature masculine and feminine, or the empowered masculine and feminine, whatever, you know, synonym you want to use to create this like vision of empowerment and wholeness.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the wounded side of the masculine and feminine, or the immature masculine and feminine, or, you know, the shadow masculine and feminine, right? The dark masculine, however you want to, again, illustrate that as a concept.
Yeah.
And so in my experience, like how, when I took that journey, I found I started to identify when I was very much in like wounded masculine, or an ego masculine is another way to think about it. And so I was moving from that place. I dressed in that, like, you know, masculine presence, these cut off jean shorts, like hanging off my ass, and these like, you know, no bra and just a tank top, and just like the way that I kind of like didn't show up into the, you know, classically feminine embodiment at all. In fact, I felt really disconnected. Like I couldn't even feel, like I was so disconnected from my womb process. And that was from trauma from my first child being born. But yeah, and so just like coming into the journey of, you know, coming from there and then being called back, and like having like my feminine called back out by one of the grandmothers, and just so going from there and then shifting into what does my sacred feminine look like. And so, you know, I spent like an entire year basically wearing like full length skirts and just like creating that connection with the earth, like in the traditional sense, like the traditional way, where women in ceremony would wear long skirts to create like a vortex up into their womb space, basically direct connection. So, you know, I really dove deep into like that very traditional, classic, like female feminine experience. And then from there, I moved out into, hey guys, I've got little ones barging into the space. See you in a bit, honey. Auntie's to the rescue. But yeah, and then from there I moved into like, what is a sacred masculine? How does a sacred masculine being would show up for this feminine, you know? And so I started, you know, going back to wearing the balance of, in my clothes, just like more pants and sometimes the skirts layered over top. But I would do the things like I would set up tents for the women at the Moon Lodge. I would cut all the wood. I would, you know, do all of the more classically masculine aspects of service. And like, how do I embody this like sacred, mature masculine within myself to show up in service to, you know, my sisters and my aunties. And so that was a really interesting experience. It took about a year to explore that and the different realms of that. And then, yeah, after that, after coming into that place of sacred masculinity within myself, it also healed so much of myself, right? And so it allowed me to bring more of that in, and then really feeling that like wholeness. Right? After honoring the feminine for a year, after honoring the masculine for a year, and just really allowing both of the broad spectrum of experience within those realms kind of come together into this divine union of self. And yeah, it was just like this really beautiful like marriage process. You know?
Well, and that's really a neat thing, because I know in my own process, because I really was the opposite, really totally embracing the feminine.
Mm-hmm.
And then because I hated my masculine side, I saw it as reflective of the patriarchy and whatever. And so, but until I realized, oh, wait, it doesn't have to be patriarchal. It can be sacred masculine too. And
Mm-hmm.
the moment I did that, and shaving my head was an act of almost ceremony into stepping into that a little bit. And although there's always more layers to go, I found they were happy playing together now, or more so than they were before. They were like, ah.
Right?
And so I really resonate with what you're sharing, because it was your journey was really feeling out the extremes and then bringing them back together, which is really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the things you've kind of mentioned was the lodge and stuff. And I know that you have Indigenous ancestry, and you
Mm-hmm.
were sharing with me that you were brought up in a white household. And tell me a little bit about that, if you will.
Yeah, so my matriarchal lineage, my mother, my grandmother, and then all of their family beyond that, back to I can track it back to 1783, all came from Secwepemc territory, and we from most recently Sketcheston, and so that part has been something that I've been coming back to. That part of myself has been coming back to for about 8 years. And when I came to my first, it was an International Indigenous Leadership Conference in Huela, and in Fountain Valley, and I showed up there, and I don't even remember how I got there. I literally don't remember how I got there. And it was there that I showed up in like my baggy jeans that were like falling off my butt, and, and really brought in and and showed how to wear a skirt and like why we would wear it, and like had the grandmother call that part of me that needed healing, because it was a little bit of backstory. I had my first child at 18, and it was just like an absolute medical malpractice nightmare that ended up with him having cerebral palsy. And at a year, I had to give him to my parents to raise, because it was beyond my capacity. I was 18, 19 at the time. And so the trauma from that, and like the way that my rite of passage into womanhood was so negligently interrupted, they caused such a deep wound that I actually like blocked myself off from my womb space, as I had kind of mentioned earlier. And then also it just interrupted my ability to really step into my womanhood. So I was left almost like in this emotional purgatory where I didn't really feel into one. And then, not getting to be a mother when I had had a child was, such a deep wound too, that I shut down all of those parts. And so that for me was like, the core of my femininity, right? Like I really work with, and I always have my whole life worked with the Divine Mother, and like being a mother was always something that was super important to me. And, when my first opportunity got so really interrupted, I blocked that part off. And that's what kind of sent me into like the wounded part of my feminine. And then from there, like as almost like it was almost like a trauma response, so I like disconnected myself to my femininity entirely, which sent me into my wounded masculine, which is where I like had most of my experience of my 20s. Like, I just like very much like held that, and like even in my sexuality and like my choices of partners and how I would pursue them and things like that, it was way more classically like toxic masculine. And so it's just like,
Okay.
yeah,
Cool.
interesting.
And so I know, like, for many Indigenous queer folk, sometimes they use two-spirit as a word, as an identity or placeholder for their role. Do you sometimes use that for yourself, or?
In the past, I have, for sure, yeah. And it's not to say that now I don't. It just doesn't come up as often, I suppose.
Okay.
Yeah, for me. I think actually even just like my expression of queerness gets a little bit minimized because, you know, I am a very like cis hetero presenting person. My partners are often men now, and like, you know, and so I feel like there's a lot of just like bypassing that happens in the circles that I run in. Yeah. It's less of a conversation. But when I get to meet lovelies like yourself and, you know, then, yeah, just like, you know, that part of my expression comes out more, gets to come out more.
Yay!
Yeah.
And so tell me a little bit before we come to time. I want to know, or you can share a little bit with the folks at home about a little bit about the work that you do.
Yeah, so my work that I am doing is pretty broad spectrum. It's very multidimensional. I've worked and studied using, you know, approximately 14 different modalities to which I've developed myself. But those ones are the ones that they work with most.
Okay.
And so that's the Imaginal awakening process, which is a full spectrum, multidimensional remembrance, alignment, and awakening. And then the second one is Soul Garden Alchemy. And so I'm doing actually quite a lot with that one. So Soul Garden Alchemy is a journey. It is a state of being. It is a multidimensional access point that everybody has within them. It is a beautiful metaphor for emotional alchemy and deep multidimensional healing. Yeah, it's a place within that gives us the power to create within our external world in a easy to access metaphor. And you use hypnotic process to like get into this space. It's really powerful.
Cool.
Yeah. And then so most recently I'm working on an oracle deck that's to go with that.
Okay.
Because there's so many different places within the soul garden that one can explore. And I am just one person. I can only get to so many people at once. And then I'm like, oh, well, what would be perfect is an oracle deck. I'm also a visual artist, a graphic designer, and I work with superfood nutrition, and all of these things kind of are culminating into programs that I'm going to be launching shortly. And but yeah, the Oracle deck is like really, I'm really excited for it because I love writing and I love photography and I love art and I love ceremony, and those are like all like cornerstones of my being. And so this Oracle deck is an expression of all of those things. So it's going to be like a choose your own adventure card deck, where each card is going to be a visually encoded portal to the place. I'm going to be doing photo shoots, and I'm going to be doing ceremony to encode the energy of the photo shoot, and then taking it into Photoshop and overlaying the magic and just really bringing these portals to life. And then within the book, it's going to be talking about the place and then the multidimensional access point. How do you get to this place? And then how to interact with it once you're there. And so people can like basically create their journey into their soul garden or into their, imaginal field. And so I'm really excited for that.
Very cool. So for those that may not have heard the term imaginal field, what does that mean?
So when I use the imaginal field or the imaginal realms, our imaginal field is like is the web that we create. It's this like conscious tapestry that we're creating when we're working with our internal world, and we're working with our manifestation, we're working with our, intention setting, however we want, however it is that we, in our unique journey, interact with the divine.
Yes.
The divine, this like great cosmic algorithm that each one of us are little nodes for. And so we have the power to like input whatever we want into this beautiful quantum computer, basically, a great cosmic algorithm, and we each have a little part. And so when we shift our node, it ripples out and it affects the whole.
Yes.
And so the imaginal realms is like, when you go inside, it is that realm of possibility. So there's nothing in this world, no physical thing that didn't first exist within the imaginal realms.
Okay, yes.
Right? So it's like the imaginal is that space between your imagination and, our actualization. And so it's where our futures come to be born. It's where our passions, our creations, it's that realm of, it's the creative field. And so when we channel our energy through this imaginative process, when we can ground it, that's when we can put it into action. And that's when we are actively being and actively like co-creating the world, right? When you're bringing the place from the imaginal realm into the real.
Yes.
That's when we're getting to activate our space as creators. And so that's
cool.
one part of it.
Yeah, I'm sure there's more layers. And
for sure.
Very cool, very cool. Yeah, in because I'm really connected to a Buddhist path, and so we use the term just infinite potential, and then once our consciousness is involved there, and then we manifest whatever. And so what you're doing is really honing in on that, the skill of using our consciousness to create what we need or want in our life, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel that our imagination, if you look at like on a system-wide education base, like imagination is often one of the first things that gets like squashed in small children, a child wakes up, has a scary dream. Oh, it's just your imagination. It's nothing to worry about. And then eventually those like powers of imagination, powers of creation kind of get put to rest. Right. And so I feel like that is like the step one of accessing our creatrix or our creator powers, right, is like that imagination. And so, yeah, really being able to access it. And the more that we can create, our bodies don't, like our minds if they do like a CT scan, that you can show that like when somebody's experiencing something in real life, or when they're experiencing something in their imaginative world, it reads the same.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And so when we put that energy in our inner vision, it really is like this access point, right? For you can access all of your memories, all of your patterns, your programs, your memory, all of your traumas, all of these things you can access with visualization, because our mind works in symbols, right? So the more creative we can get with our visualization process, the more in depth we can get with our, our entire personal being. It's really incredible. And I think it is a superpower that we all have. And I just want to remind people that they have it too.
Yeah. And it's really cool. I'm glad you're saying that, because it's one of those things like Carl Jung talked about a lot through archetypes, and having through the, not just the subconscious, but the collective subconscious that we're connected to. And this is kind of in a different way, speaking of the same kind of thing, which is really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's super genius. And like, really powerful. And I really do believe like, all of those archetypes, even all of the godheads, all of the, all of these different representative heads of faith and prophets and whatnot, I feel like that all exists in the fourth dimensional realm. So if we are like in our bodies, our meat suits, this is our third dimension, physical realm. The fourth dimension is still within the duality, but it's the first non-physical. So it's also the realm of media and emotion. And, it's basically where great battle for consciousness is ongoing all the time. But archetypes are in that as well, right? Yeah. And so it's all very, like, I feel like the more people can be aware of, like, that realm, the more power we have to go beyond that into the non-dualistic realms. Yeah,
absolutely. So I think we're coming up on time, but I wanted to see if you had any message or thought for the people at home, ideas to support them on their path or whatever comes up for you.
So one of the most foundational things that I think anybody exploring their spiritual path or their ascension process or even meditation or anywhere where you're kind of like going into your inner worlds or maybe like out into the cosmic worlds, one of the most foundational pieces that I think gets overlooked is grounding and like how to create these real live roots down into the earth, right? Because if we're going to be traveling out beyond the dimensional spectrum, we need to be grounded right down into the very center, so all the way down to the heart of the earth. And then we can go wherever we want. Then we can explore the multiverse and always be able to come home. And not only that, but it also, once we get these big ideas and we get downloads and, we receive information from, the cosmic realms, how are you going to put it into actualization, right? I find so many people, they're like, all of these, and I was one of them, and this is why I know. And you get all of these ideas, and then you, don't actually do anything with them because you're not grounded. Yes. Right? And so when we expand our consciousness to, realize that we exist, our energy being, our energy self, it exists far beyond this physical suit that we have, right? So we can actually create energetic root systems. And so if you want to join me, then we can all breathe in some roots together. Yeah?
Sure, let's do it.
All right. Sweet. So just closing your eyes gently and taking a nice, deep, beautiful breath in. Feeling into the heart, and as the exhale, dropping it down to the belly. Breathing in again. And on the exhale, breathing down. Feeling yourself plant into the earth like a beautiful little seed. As you nestle yourself down into the fertile soils of Mama Gaia, you can start to experience growing your root tendrils, little tiny fingers at first, and growing wider, deeper, continuing to grow your tendrils out and allowing them to thicken up and feel more secure as you expand them out and wide. Perhaps you can even reach out and connect to the mycelial networks, the beautiful mycelium mushroom kingdom that runs around the whole world, tuning into that, allowing yourself to share in the network of information and nutrition and balance within the spectrum of the forest, and continuing to breathe that in. And then growing the roots down even further, perhaps connecting out to sacred waters, pools of hydration, drawing in all of the hydration you need to nourish each and every one of your cells, and continuing to grow the roots down even further, going down into the earth, perhaps connecting to the crystal kingdoms. Perhaps you can even notice that there is a conscious living grid of crystals underneath and below you that you can wrap your roots around. All the ones that are perfect for your day, that are going to support you in your upcoming time and help you ground and transmute any energies that come your way. You're going to be aware of them now. Perhaps noticing in the geometric grid that they create below you and around you. And perhaps you can continue to grow your roots down, connecting to the mineral kingdom, Any minerals that your body is deficient of can be absorbed this way, bringing your body into total balance. Continuing to grow your roots out and wide, even deeper and deeper, perhaps connecting to the bones of your ancestors, drawing in their support and their wisdom and the prayers that they made for you before you were even thought of. And continuing to grow down even further, more and more through all of the plates and through all of the layers, continuing to release your taproot all the way down, all the way into the heart of Mama Gaia, the beautiful iron crystal core, heart of the earth. As you grow your roots all the way around it, embracing her, you can feel the iron in her core connect to the iron in your blood as you draw upon that abundance, draw upon that unconditional love, unconditional support, that nurturance, and drawing that energy, allowing it to flood up your roots and up into your root, growing up, flowing up your body, bringing that alignment, that nourishment, that abundance, that unconditionality, that infinite nature of support, of love. And feeding it up into your heart as you breathe that in. And bringing your awareness to your heart as well. Allowing it to open. Flowing down into your arms, through your hands, so you can consciously create the world around you today. Breathing in again. Becoming so aware of your body, your physical self. Starting to wiggle your fingers and your toes. Allowing the energy to flow into your physical self, into your wrists and ankles, your elbows and your knees, moving your body, moving and connecting to your physical self, allowing your soul to call in, become present, become grounded again, balanced within the heart. Perhaps feeling as your branches have the desire to grow towards the cosmos, out into the sacred sky, connecting to planets and moons, celestial bodies, to star beings and nations, all the way through the multiverse to the great central sun, and allowing the beautiful golden nectar of the divine blueprint shine down to your crown, through your leaves, allowing your leaves to synthesize the cosmic photonic rays as they beam down upon you, bringing all of the golden light down into the heart as well. And allowing that beautiful presence and balance to manifest within your heart. Beautiful heart space, a higher heart in which you will move from. The higher heart that's connected to your palms, and so that you may bring your heart's desire into creation. The higher heart that's connected to the soles of the feet, so that every step you make is a blessing on the earth. Now breathing yourself back in, breathing your body, your soul, your spirit, your higher divine consciousness, breathing it all into the heart, where we will arrive back together, allowing your eyes to gently flutter open.
Well, thank you so much. That was such a gift. You're such a gift. I'm so glad we were able to connect at Mountain Spirit Festival. What I will be doing is in the details description of this video, when I place it on YouTube, I will make sure I have your information on there. So if anyone is interested, you can contact her. yeah, and if anyone has any more comments or whatever, please post below. You can also subscribe, press the bell button to make sure that you can get up to date on more awesome videos that are coming your way, and check out my website. Besides that, I think that's it.
And if anybody liked that meditation, that is included in one part of my beginner's quest on my website. So soulgardenalchemy.com is my website, and you can sign up, and then you get to go on a free beginner's quest. It's a 3-part journey, and you can go through some other foundational meditation practices so that you can like live your best and brightest self.
Yay. All right. Well, thank you again, Ima. And I'll be talking
for having me. So grateful for you.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Talk to you all folks later.